Hi, friends and family. Today marks my first episode and it's entitled Answering the Call. In today's episode, we're going to get into some things. Top three things. One, we're going to talk about answering God's call in my life to move to Chicago, answering God's call in my life to start a podcast, and three, the importance of answering God's call in your life. But before we get into the things, let's open up our minds and hearts in prayer. Lord, allow me to be a light. Allow those that are listening to receive your word. Speak through me and just cover me, Jesus, in your holy and righteous name. Amen. Okay, let's go. So we're going to rewind back to 2016. That's 7 years ago. So 7 years ago, I had one of my girlfriends move from Connecticut to Wisconsin. She got her first big time job, and me and my other friend were just super, super excited to see her. Now, this is the first time we ever even traveled to the Midwest. I had no idea what it was about, nothing. The only thing we knew about the Midwest was really focused in on more like Chicago. And if you're in Chicago, you have a different perception than when you're not living in Chicago. So our perception was like, I don't know. We hear all this stuff on the news. But anywho, we get to Wisconsin in the middle of December. And when I tell you, honey, it was absolutely freezing. Like, I'm from Connecticut, so I felt like I could deal with some sort of cold weather, but that took the cake. And that's just Wisconsin. So we're in Wisconsin, and this was like an impromptu trip because one, she didn't know we were coming. We literally just showed up and said, hey, we're outside. And so while we're there, we're just trying to like figure out things to do. And then we decided let's take a day trip and travel out to Chicago. So we drive to Chicago from Wisconsin in the middle of December. Apparently, we should have known better, but we did not. So we are on literally the strip where the Bean is, where all the stores are. And when I tell you at this point, so we were at Magnificent Mile, right? At this point, I didn't even know that I was going to experience such level of coldness. We literally got out the car after parking, and I literally felt like once I got outside, like my nose, all the little moistness in your nose literally froze. And so we're going to Zara, we're going store to store, and I'm like, y'all, I can't keep going outside like this. This is like crazy. So anywho, we went through the trip, whatever, to Chicago. And honestly, it was so cold. And there was some other things that happened that in my head, I had literally zero intention of ever returning to Chicago. So honestly, if you were to speak to one of my friends, they would be like, yeah, Renee ain't got nothing good to say. She like, it's cold, it's this, it's that. So I just wanted to like give you my first experience of Chicago so that you could kind of understand that this is all God's doing. So anywho, we fast forward to 2023. That was the last time I've been to Chicago. So literally out of sight, out of mind. But it was so weird. Like the start of 2023, I just had this weird feeling like, I was just feeling like, I just feel like something really major in my life is going to happen in November. And I couldn't put my finger on it. I'm like, am I going to meet my person? What's going to happen? Like, what is it that's going to happen in November? And why is that so heavy on my heart? So like the months leading up to it, I felt like God was just continuing to just like cut back the layers and just showing me like, it might not be your man. You know what I'm saying? You're really going to be surprised on what I do in your life. So anywho, we're in 2023. I'm literally in my dream job. I'm working at the hospital. I'm in HR. I love my job. I was recently promoted from talent acquisition to employee relations. So I'm literally doing what I want to do. And when I mean I'm comfortable, I have great relationships with the managers, my team, things are going great. Like, I couldn't ask for a better work environment and a better job. Now, was it stressful? Absolutely. But I just felt so blessed. Like, in that role, I even had someone from compliance reach out to me trying to get me to go to another opportunity. I was definitely interested in it. And I was looking at it like, dang, like that would give me like an additional like $20,000, whatever. And so I ended up going for that interview. I didn't end up getting it. And I was a little bummed. And I'm like, dang, like they're the one that reached out to me about the job. So like, what's up? Like, and then I interviewed and you don't give it to me. But anyway, it was all a part of God's plan. And so, in that moment of me not getting the job and still working within the organization, I did feel a little bit of like, it was like I was just a little weary, like, is this for me? Is it not for me? Like, because you got $20,000 dangling in your face and it's similar to what you're doing now. You're like, I really want that. But for some reason, I got just like a peace that I can't even explain that made me know, like, you know what? It just wasn't for you. And you're still in the role that I destined you to be in. So through that kind of just went behind me. I was pushing forward, doing great at work. And I literally was just so comfortable. But it was around May of 2023 that it really kicked in like, no, Renee, something is going to happen in November and you got to get ready. And so from that moment, I literally just started seeing Chicago. I would go on Instagram. I mean, I've never typed in anything from 2016 experience and what I experienced with that cold. I didn't type anything in. I had no intention at all. So I would go on Instagram. I would see Chicago restaurants, this, that, everything Chicago. And I'm like, it's looking like maybe I need to run it back. But still at this time, I did not know what was going to happen. So I would be on the highway driving. I would see Chicago license plates. I would see billboards with Chicago. I would go to New York. I went to New York with some of my girlfriends from Detroit. And when I tell you, every second I turned around in the middle of New York City, I kept seeing something that was related to Chicago, whether it was a play, whether it was a license plate, whether it was someone with a t-shirt on, Bulls, everything. I just kept seeing it. And it was to the point that I was like, okay, there's no coincidence in this. Like, there is clearly a reason why I'm seeing this. So I started to passively pray about it. Passively. I'm like, God, what's going on? Because why do I keep seeing Chicago? It's like it's following me everywhere. And then I'm like, I'm praying. And as I'm praying, I'm seeing more Chicago. Literally, I would turn on my TV. I'm watching HGTV, the house they're renovating, Chicago. It was just getting to the point that I was like, okay, something's up. So I really took the time to like start fasting and praying about next steps. But during that time of fasting, there was a lot of turmoil going on, especially with my car, my parents' health. It was just so much going on. So in the midst of that, of thinking like, okay, what does God have for me? Am I supposed to move to Chicago? What's going on? I kind of just was like, you know what? I feel overwhelmed. Like that year, especially that summer, I basically did not have my car the entire summer. Every second, there was another issue wrong with my car. And I'm not talking about little issues like you just got to fix a little tire or a little bolt. I'm talking about engine. I'm talking about the seat getting stuck in a position that I can't drive in. Like, it's like all that, So it was literally a lot going on. I'm spending thousands and thousands of dollars. And I'm just like at the point where I'm almost done paying for the car. And I feel like I don't want to keep putting money into this car and then have to get a new car, you know? So with all of that, um, through that, that's one piece. I got my mom, and my dad. They're a little bit older. They're going through what they're going through. So I'm just really feeling like a bit overwhelmed. But God is so good. God is so good. When I tell you the last car issue that I had was roughly, I would say, a little over $3,000. And I was like, I had enough at this point. Because at this point, I probably was up to 6,000 or something dollars that I spent on my car this summer. I had two tires, and I'm a pretty good driver. I'm driving, tire just pops. This happened twice on separate occasions. So I knew this was a spiritual warfare attack. I'm driving on the highway. Someone's tire just pops off, shatters my windshield. Things like that were just like abnormal just started happening. And I'm the type of person that I go to the car dealership for everything, like everything. Outside of pumping gas and putting air in the tire, I'm going to the car dealership. So the fact that I was having these sort of issues, I just knew that I was under attack. So literally, we're now in around, I would say, July. And I'm over it. I just spent a couple $1,000s. I'm like, you know what, God, like, this is the money that I really wanted to save and just really like knock my credit card bills down, my student loans, everything. And it just feels like I keep dishing out money. Every money that I'm getting in, I'm dishing it out. But when I tell you, we serve a merciful God that when he sees that you are going through it, he will pull you out. So literally, the craziest thing is now we're in, I would say, end of July, August. And I was just like, you know what? I keep seeing Chicago. I'm going through so much with my family, my car. And I'm like, you know what? If you really want me to move, I'm going to apply to jobs, but I'm not going to put much effort into it because I know that if you want it for me, you're going to give me the job. So I literally only applied to 2 jobs. And one of the jobs I knew off rip. I was like, this is definitely not, it's what I do, but it's not the field that I would want to stay in. I definitely always want to stay in healthcare. And this was like kind of healthcare, but more like pharmaceuticals. And I was just like, I don't know if I want to go to that path. But one of the jobs that I applied to, I was like, you know what, God, if I get that job, it's up. So putting that all together. So you gotta follow what I'm gonna tell you. So I literally applied to 2 jobs. One of the jobs I definitely didn't want. And I just kind of put in the back burner, kept working, kept pushing, and I kept seeing Chicago. And I'm like, well, if God want me to move, he gonna do what he do. So I kind of put my little I'm leaving it in your hands cap on. So now we're in the end of September. I put those applications out. And to be honest, I really wasn't thinking about them in that moment. I was more focused on trying to get my money back up, making sure my family's good, etc. So I get an email from the recruiter at the job that I actually wanted because I already saw that I didn't get the other job. They reviewed my application. I wasn't moved forward in the process. So I got this email from the recruiter. And when I tell you, when I saw that email, I literally knew from that moment, it's time. It's time. I knew that I got the job before I even spoke to the recruiter. It was like God just put this peace that passed all understanding on me to know that this was it. So now I doing the screening with the recruiter, and I was a recruiter myself. So you know how it goes. So we're talking and I just feel peace, like, wow, this organization sounds fabulous. It sounds like it really promotes, work-life balance. It really goes to bat for their workers. And it just really sounds like a place that I would want to be. And I'm like, okay, God, I feel like I already got it. You're giving me this peace. So we're going to see what you do. When I tell you, Each and every interview I went through, I just knew like check, check, check. So when they gave me the job offer, I was literally more fearful, like, oh wow, like that means you got to move now, Renee, because this job is in Chicago. I probably forgot to mention that this job's in Chicago, and I'm like, okay, this is it. So a couple things that I want to tie in together. So I get the job. The job amount of salary is literally the same exact salary that I would have been offered earlier on in the year if I had took the compliance job. So, or if I would have got the compliance job because I didn't get the compliance job. So God was telling me, Renee, I know you didn't get that. You know, the money looked good, but I didn't want you in that position. So you have to wait on me. That was number one. And I was like, you know what, God? I'm talking the same exact number. And on top of that, let me tell you about the car situation, how he worked that out for me too. So I am one of those people that check my mail basically every day. I'm on them. I'm like, I need to see what's coming in. I need to see, I don't want nobody scamming me. So I check my mail all the time. So literally, I get this letter from Mercedes, right? And I'm like, what they want? Because at this point, I'm so sick of it. I'm sick of their car. I'm like, what these folks want from me? And literally, the craziest thing is, I opened the letter thinking it's going to be like, you should trade your car in. And I'm like, ugh. So I literally open it and I'm like, wait a minute. This looks like it's something good. So you remember when I told you that I dished out thousands of dollars? The biggest problem I had was it was a valve that was going into the engine was malfunctioning. And to get anything that's connected to the engine, it's going to cost a lot of money. So literally, the letter said, let me tell you about God. The letter literally said that same issue, the issue that I spent the most money on, was now a recall in the car. So literally told me in that letter that if I want a refund, if I had any experiences in which I had to pay for things for the car that had that issue, I could get a refund. I literally just had that issue. So I'm like, you know what, God? You knew that had I had that money, I probably would have spent it on something else. So you made sure to take it from me, but you put it in the bank of God. Mercedes thought they had it, but he put it in the bank of God so that he could give it to me at the right time because he knew now I was going to have to spend a couple more $1,000 to move. So when I tell you, I literally was just like, God, you are so good. You are so good because, I'm getting a little emotional. You are so good because you literally do things right on time. Even when we delay ourselves, even when we don't initially pick up the phone and say, yes, God, I want to do what you want me to do. You sometimes wait on us. You sometimes wait on us. And as I was like going through all the thoughts of, getting my life together, you know what I'm saying? And thinking like, how do I get all of this done? You literally put money to the side for me. You put a job to the side for me. And all you said to me was answer the call when I call. And I'm just so grateful that I listened and I picked up and I answered that call. So moving literally was seamless. I had good funds. The apartment was perfect. Everything was perfect. And I was just like, God, you are so good. And the big piece about this is, here's the kicker. You remember how I said that I felt like I was going to have a life-changing moment in November? I literally moved to Chicago in November. So God placed it on my heart and spirit. He placed the feeling of something's coming. And he made me know when it was to come to give me confirmation to know that this was all him. And this was the first time that I was like really secretive with what was next in my life. Usually I talk to my friends and I'm like, this is this and that, this is what I got going on. This is what I'm thinking. But something told me to keep this between just me and God. So when I was telling people like, hey y'all, I got some news. I'm moving to Chicago. They were like, wait, what? Everyone was so shocked because I literally kept this between me and him because I just had a feeling like this was going to be something huge. And so God is just so good. Literally, when I started my job, day one, you get those feelings of being super nervous. Like, am I the woman for the job? Like, God, I done moved from Connecticut to Chicago. Like, how I'm gonna meet people. All the thoughts are just coming in your head. Am I going to be successful here? Because now I'm at like a major hospital. And I worked at a great hospital before, but this one is like an AMC. It's connected to a school. It's really well known here. I'm like, God, this is overwhelming. And when I tell you God will give you the confirmation you need to settle your spirit, he will. Literally walked into the orientation. My manager, she's a director. My manager came to meet me. And as we're walking over to my office, we're just talking. And I was like, wow, this feels good. But I'm still nervous because that's my boss at the end of the day. And when we get to my office, she says to me, Renee, I don't usually talk like this with anyone, but I have to tell you, I prayed for you. I prayed for you, and God literally sent me you. And that, like, when I tell you, that just touched my soul because God knew that I was a little like fuzzy that day, and I just needed that extra confirmation that this was all his plan. So when I tell you, do not limit God. Answer the call. You may be nervous. You may be thinking to yourself, like, what is going on? But just know that if he called you to something, he's going to give you the resources and the tools needed to be successful on that journey. And so I want to just pause to talk about, I was just reading the book of Jonah. I'm reading the book of Jonah and I'm like literally relating it to modern day. And so for those that don't know, Jonah was called by God to go to Nineveh, and he was called to tell them and warn them about their behavior. And he was like giving a lot of pushback pretty much. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to read actually from the book of Jonah, verse 1. I read from the New King James Version. So this is what it says. It says, now the word of the Lord came to Jonah, the son of Amittai, saying, arise, go to Nineveh, that great city, and cry out against it, for their wickedness has come up before me. And so Jonah, he heard, that's the call. He got the call. But Jonah, he said, oh no, I don't want to do that. Get somebody else to do it. Literally, Jonah hops on a ship and tries to say toodaloo to God. So while he's on that ship is rocking. It's rocking. It's looking like it's not going to get back to shore. They're not going to dock. It's looking real, real, real rough. And he in the bottom of the ship sleep. Everybody like throwing the cargo off. They're literally like frantic. Like, what's going on? Like, who upset God? Like, we rocking. They know that this might be it. So they're waking everyone up. They wake up Jonah. They like, Jonah, do you know what's going on? Like, why is it rocking like this? What did you do to disturb God? Like, was it you? Because they already like started talking amongst each other, and they're like, it ain't me. I'm good. So they get Jonah up. Jonah is literally like, yeah, y'all, it's me. I'm the problem. He's like, you know what? Y'all need to go ahead and throw me overboard because I know I'm the problem. Because he knew that he did not answer God's call. Jonah knew. So it's so funny because they low-key did not want to throw him overboard. I know they didn't. But they were like, well, I mean, if it's going to be you or all of us, we're going to have to trust your word and throw you overboard. So literally, Jonah gets thrown overboard. He gets swallowed by a whale, and he's in the belly of the whale for 3 days. While he's in the belly of the whale, he pretty much cries out to God. He's remorseful. He's saying to God, like, I'm sorry. I'm going to do what you want me to do. I'm going to answer your call. So he gets spit out, and then he goes to Nineveh. And when he goes to Nineveh, he literally warns the people of their wickedness to turn away from their sin. And in that moment, 120,000, well, actually, the Bible said it's over 120,000 people from one man stop doing the wickedness, stop sinning, and literally decided in that moment that they wanted to heed what he was saying, their warning from God, to get back right. So as I was thinking about that, it made me think about the call on my life. And me coming to Chicago was one piece, but God has been pushing me for a long time to get on board with a podcast. He started with me back in 2019. It was on me. Renee, I need you to start a podcast. And at that time, I was planning on doing it. I took photos. I started getting some content fillers, all these things, but I was doing it with one of my friends. And that doesn't mean that that's like out of the picture, like we won't end up, coming back together. But what happened was she moved, she got into nursing school, and her life was transitioning in a different way. And even though we might have this plan in our head, like we see it this way, when God's getting ready to transition you, you have to listen to what he wants for you. And he's going to make sure that he plugs you in with the resources, everything that you need to really just push through. But in our head, we get the fear. We get, well, how are we going to do this? We're looking at logistics. How am I going to do this? What am I going to say? What are the topics going to be? I don't want to do this by myself, So we literally run from the call of God and we behave like Jonah. And when I started to look at that on a wider scope, I was like, the devil was really after Jonah's call on his life, because he knew that if Jonah went to Nineveh and he preached the word and told them to return from their wicked ways, you got to stop what you're doing, that would mean 120,000 people would not know God's voice. So he put the fear, he put the doubt, he made Jonah say, nah, the only thing I could do is run. Because he was scared that if Jonah answered the call from God, that would mean that Satan lost 120,000 people in one moment. So when I started to think of that, I said, oh Lord, I don't want to be like Jonah. I don't want to delay the purpose on my life. I don't want the devil to win in any way. I don't want to have to go to the belly of the whale. But God is so merciful and so patient. And even though Jonah originally did what he did, God still made sure to protect him. He made sure to keep him. He made sure to give him resources so that when he was ready to answer the call, he could. So everyone that's listening, family, friends, new guests that we're going to be family and friends or whatever it is, I want you to think to yourself, what call are you running from? What is God telling you to do? What is he pressing on your spirit? It could be literally, I want you to move. It could be, I want you to forgive that person. It could be, I want you to let go of that relationship. Whatever he's calling you to do and you feel it in your spirit, pray on it. Pray on it, but don't run. Answer the call. Answer the call. Because when God calls you to something, it's literally to bless someone else. You could be saving someone's life. You could be saving your own life. God is limitless. So here ends episode 1. I pray that you are filled. I pray that you think about those things. I really want you to take some time and meditate on a couple of those questions that I asked. What is God calling you to do? What is holding you back from doing what God has called you to do? Meditate on those things, write those things down, pray on it, fast on it if you need to, but answer God when He's calling you. Take care, everyone.